All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we are discussing one of the most iconic stories that I know a lot of people know because there is a famous movie with Hedy Lamarr in it called Samson and Delilah. So, before we get to the meat of the story, I want to know what you all remember from the story before reading it. So I know we just read it, so the scriptures in our minds, but what from culture do you remember about Samson and Delilah?
Nothing really, except that I think the actress who played whoever Delilah was one of those vampy Hollywood types. I can't remember who it was. Who was it? I didn't see it.
So it's played by Hedy Lamarr, who
Oh, Hedy Lamarr.
interestingly was also an inventor and is credited as
Yes.
being the inventor of Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
I read that. Yes.
Yeah, Larry?
what I remember, I guess, is from Sunday school. That Samson was this great, strong man that he tore down a temple with his bare hands, and
Oh,
he was
really?
done in by a woman who cut his hair all off. Now, that's what I remember.
Why did he tear down the temple?
Well, we'll get to that. It's in the
Oh,
story.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other memories from the story of Samson and Delilah? All right. Yeah, Gretchen?
Well, there was always this big picture of, I don't know where it was. It was Samson and the big heavy pillar.
Pillars, yeah.
And I think Larry mentioned this, the emphasis was a little bit too on Delilah as being a bad lady. And I don't think we encountered so much about the failings of Samson and his personal demons, but we just knew that he was strong and virile, and she undone ever did him in.
Yeah, this story classically is told in a way that it almost feels like the battle of the sexes of like strong men versus cunning women, and are women the pitfall of good men, or is there something else going on? And in some ways Samson is very much like a superhero character. He's like He-Man, strong guy. My question for you all to consider is Samson a good person?
No.
Because like he's in the Judges, and like he's in some ways a celebrated character. In some ways he's a very complex and not like there's nuance. He's not just like a straightforward Captain America kind of guy. So
Well,
let's
I was going to answer your question, but you're not finished asking it.
Oh, no, go for it.
Well, he sounded to me like I don't know how young he was when he decided he wanted to marry a Philistine woman, but he was kind of a little bit of a troublemaker, a hard adolescent, and so he got his way. They arranged for her to marry him, and then there was nothing but trouble, and which could have been foreseen, I think, but was kind of a dumb thing to do, and his father was dumber to allow it, but he got what he wanted.
Yeah.
He gave her away. He gave her away to somebody, or a cousin or something.
Yeah, Larry?
I got the impression that Samson wasn't very bright. He was like one of these great, big, strong guys, but he's got no judgment. He's got little idea of of morals or what's going on. He just gets what he wants with brute strength, and that's it. He's a pretty boy, with a lot of muscle, but there's not much upstairs.
Ah. But also, pausing for a second. Good morning, Mary Ellen. We're glad you could join us.
Thank you.
We were just doing some initial thinking about the story of Samson and Delilah, and some of the classic understandings, whether or not you've seen the movie or not, and just some initial impressions of Samson's character going into this.
He also had parents who indulged him too much. Larry mentioned that his dad, I mean, they let him do things that he shouldn't have gotten by with.
Got to give his parents credit, though. They did ask the messenger from the Lord if there was any specifics as to how to raise him. They were concerned about this.
Yeah.
They didn't get any guidance at all, so it happened.
Well, they kind of got the purity answer. He's a Nazarite, and that only goes so far, like you say, Gary, in raising him, because that's one aspect of how he's, not supposed to drink and not supposed to have his hair cut. So, but then the rest of it, they fell short a little bit. Maybe God fell short on telling them to watch out for this kid who's got some, as contemporary we would say, he thinks with another body part.
So that brings us back to the beginning. So let's actually start. We have 4 chapters to discuss today. So I'm going to try to keep us moving. I thought it was worthwhile to keep Samson's story together. He probably is the judge that the book of Judges talks about the most. And I think that's because he does have this kind of like superhero, ancient hero status, where there is a bunch of legends about Samson anyways, and so they're sticking them all together. And it begins with his conception, which, verse 1, once again, we have, excuse me, the flow of the book of Judges, of course, between the big famous judges, we have the Israelites did what was bad in the sight of the Lord. And then the Lord hands them over to the group of people, which is a way to say, once again, the Israelite tribes are being oppressed by an outside force. And so God needs to raise up a judge and a hero to guide the people. And to do this, the angel of the Lord, the messenger of God, comes to a woman who is barren, and tells her that she will conceive a son. I'm curious if this sounds familiar. Where have we heard this before?
Yeah, it's Sarah, except that it was Sarah. She didn't get her baby as quickly as this lady did. I think she's unnamed.
So the barren wife sounds like Abraham and Sarah. Is there another part that sounds familiar about this?
Well, the Immaculate Conception, angel comes to Mary and said, she will conceive.
The birth of Samuel.
The birth of Samuel. Yeah, that's another one where barren woman talked to by an angel. So this is, I bring this up because you see how we have the trope start, or this idea started back way with Abraham and Sarah. We hit a bunch of famous people who also have this happen. So when the story of Jesus starts with an angel of the Lord appeared to Mary, it's familiar at this point. The funny part about this is that the angel of the Lord talks to the wife. The husband is like, wait. You didn't talk to me. He wants to hear from the angel of the Lord. And so they pray, and the angel of the Lord appears to the wife again. And the wife has to go and run and get the husband. So what do you think of this, that like multiple times or twice, the angel of the Lord specifically talks to the wife?
Well, she's the one that's going to have to bear the child.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have a name though.
Nope. Unnamed woman.
Hi.
How's your pain?
So, but the message that the angel of the Lord gives of like the instructions for this child is that the child is going to be a Nazirite. Now, did any of you go and look up what a Nazirite means?
Well, there was something at the bottom of the page, but
Okay, what did the bottom of the page say?
it means consecrated and involved a temporary vow to abstain from drinking alcoholic beverages, cutting your hair, and having contact with the dead. The origins may have been among warrior groups. The combination of a special birth to a barren mother and a Nazarite motif is also found in the story of Samuel. Strong drink, fortified wine, and beer is drink.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about it.
All right. Larry, did you find anything else?
Well, what I found, they call them an Israel ascetic of some sort.
Right. So he has a special set of rules that he has to live by growing up and into his adulthood. These rules are found some in Numbers chapter 6, verses 1 through 21. So this isn't the first time that the idea of having a Nazirite appears. So this goes back to the Torah and some of the rules there. I was looking at them before we signed on, but there's nothing true more. You all have, I mean, we have already covered it basically. The thing that gets to be a little bit interesting with how this affects Samson being raised is water is not always guaranteed to be like clean. And so having a little bit of alcohol in a beverage actually makes it more sanitary, but it does have the effect of like you're constantly drinking alcohol. And so like having a low level of alcohol in your system does have some impairments that would go with it. At the same time, if you think about a little boy being raised and he can't drink what everyone else is drinking, what does that do to like a child and their formation when everyone's just like passing around the drink and you have to be like, oh, I'm not allowed to drink that?
Well,
Well, it sets you aside, doesn't it?
yeah. And you don't cut your hair either.
Right.
Well,
I
he
don't
knew he
think
was
that's
special,
just
but I don't think he liked it, probably. Because it, most kids like to be like everybody else. I don't know. Maybe it's between being special and being destined for great things, maybe, or he knew he was special, so he could get away with marrying somebody in the occupying tribe. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
He could be both, make him grandiose and make him feel different.
There's one thing that kind of surprised me when I turned to the numbers. It's for men or women,
Oh,
which I thought was interesting. And isn't there a thing in about Jesus' life, and they shall say he was a Nazarene, which is similar to Nazarite, but it's because he comes from Nazareth or something like that.
So there's two kind of pieces to this. So John the Baptist is thought to have actually been a Nazarite. Just like looking at the description of him, he's kind of this wild person living in the desert. He may have been a part of some people say he was part of the Essenes, which were a different ascetic group of people. And then others are saying that like he fits the like look of a Nazarite. But then there is the play on words of Nazarene or Nazareth, Nazarene, and Nazarite, that there are some places in the scripture that seem to talk about the Messiah being a Nazarite. And so Jesus didn't follow these rules. We know Jesus drank wine. He made wine from water and kept the party going. So we know that he wasn't a part of the actual like ascetic group doing this. But at the same time, making Jesus from Nazareth may have been like a workaround to make to bring some of that prophecy full circle. Because what we know is that Jesus's base of operations for his ministry in adulthood is not Nazareth. It's Capernaum. And so Capernaum is where Jesus is in and around, but it's like his hometown is Nazareth. And so he's thought to be a Nazarene or a Nazarite. It's a play on words, but yeah, the two are supposed to be connected. Anyways, okay, so that kind of sets up Samson's origin stories. He's kind of this kid that's set aside. You're not supposed to cut his hair, not supposed to drink wine. Mom's not supposed to drink wine. You're not even really supposed to touch the fruit of the vine. Just like it's a way to make sure that you're not drinking wine is don't even drink the fruit. Just stay away from it all. But the last thing to set up before we kind of go into the story is this story, the enemy is the Philistines. Now, I've talked about this a little bit, but when you all think of the Philistines, what are some of the descriptors that you think of when it comes to them?
Don't they call some people Philistines?
Yes,
And
that's what I was
kind of,
thinking.
kind of a derogatory term about
Yeah.
their
They don't really
behavior.
unsophisticated, what poorly read.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So
I'm not really sure. My mother used to use that term to refer to people that were sort of fakers, you know. But yeah,
we kind of depict them as being brutish and like a little bit backwards behind the times.
Which is kind of odd because the Philistines, were probably a bit ahead of the time, a little bit more than Israel because they did trading. I mean, they had contact. They were.
So that's exactly what I was going to bring up, is that the Philistines are actually a fairly advanced civilization. I had to look at where they originated. So they are a Greek seafaring culture that starts on the island of Crete. And so these are the descendants of the Minoan civilization. And so they go from Crete and they sail around the Mediterranean. They set up shop on the west coast of Israel. They eventually have like duke it out with Egypt. But guaranteed the Philistines are much more advanced of a civilization than the Israelites are going to be. And it's one of the reasons why they are, if you think about it, the story of David and Goliath, which will come up in a few hundred years, David is the underdog. And you have Goliath, who is this Philistine. And we think of that, like, I think that's where that brutish idea comes from, that these are like big, dumb people. But actually, David is the underdog because their weapons technology is much more advanced. While the people of Israel are still basically in the Bronze Age at this point, they're now past that. They are now making weapons of things that are better than bronze. And so this is once again where the Israelites are the underdogs, not just because the Philistines are bigger people, but actually because they're more advanced. They're able to navigate the Mediterranean Ocean or the Mediterranean Sea. They have trading partners, they have contact with other parts. So this is more like an aristocratic, a little bit more of a fancy urbanite culture. And I just want to make sure that we're on the same page with that, because the way we use Philistine is not how they would have understood Philistines.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. So with that under our belts, the first episode in like Samson's story is Samson's marriage, where Samson basically goes to town, sees a Philistine woman, and is like, that one right there, mom and dad, go get me that Philistine woman. So what do we think about, this is where I think we've already talked about it a little bit in the beginning, where Samson seems a little bit brutish, a little bit demanding, a little bit maybe as a spoiled child,
Mhm.
being the only child and the child of the parents when they wanted a child so desperately. What do we think of this story where there's attributed to him that like the Lord is upon him and like God is working through this, and at the same time we have this story of Samson kind of being fickle?
We don't emphasize that in Sunday school.
No?
Forget that.
Mhm.
We don't even mention that he had this first wife that, he got tired of and said, too bad.
Mhm. Yeah.
He had one before this one.
Oh no, the one we're talking about
Oh,
right
yeah.
now is his first wife.
Well, yeah, he gave her away.
Yeah.
So
So
as the
trouble.
story goes, as he's walking to town to like do the whole marriage thing, a lion rushes on Samson, and it says that the spirit of the Lord rushes on Samson, and he just kills this lion with his bare hands. Later on, a colony of honeybees sets up in this lion. He's eaten the honey, he's given the honey to his parents, and then he goes to his wedding and he tells the companions that are given to him this riddle, and if they can solve it in a certain amount of time, Samson's going to give them a lot of fine garments, and if they can't solve it, they have to give Samson a lot of fine garments. And what he's asking for is linen outfits and festival outfits, and this would have been expensive. And he's asking this of the Philistines, who have this kind of elite culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, Larry.
Apparently he wasn't drunk, since he's not supposed to. But what could have been his motivation? Why did he even bring this up? Saying if they can answer this silly riddle, which no one
Was
could.
the riddle related to the honey being in the
Yeah,
carcass of the lion?
Yeah.
It is, but why tell the riddle at all? Yeah, Gretchen?
Yeah. Why?
Especially since Nazarites aren't supposed to touch corpses.
Oh, right.
That's right. You aren't supposed to have anything to
But
Yeah, he's not supposed to be doing that either.
do.
So does anyone have a thought of why Samson's doing this?
I put a question mark next to it. I thought it was a little strange. Makes a good story, though.
Mhm.
It's sort of a
Yeah.
story motif.
So if you go back and look at verse 4, you will see it says that his father and mother did not know that this was from the Lord, for he was seeking a pretext to act against the Philistines.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
So all of this is because Samson doesn't like the Philistines and wants an excuse to lash out at them. So
Oh,
he marries a girl,
Hmm.
gives the companions a riddle, and lo and behold, the companions can't figure it out because who the heck would guess that Samson came upon a lion with honeybees in it? Like, that's weird. And so Samson then, that's his excuse to lash out, and he responds with, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you had not found out the riddle." And then he goes and kills everyone.
Mhm.
So this is when I ask, is Samson a good person?
It's an interesting euphemism, plowed with my heifer. I mean, now there
Yeah.
is one that nobody would guess today. You know, he said, well, he was plowing with my heifer. Oh, well, okay, yeah, but it means something here.
Mm-hmm.
That's
I
right.
thought first it said plowed my heifer, but it's plowed with my heifer.
well, you know, he's by our standards, he's not a good person, but you know, if God is wanting Israel to beat all their enemies, he's probably a good person. He's trying to figure out how to get back at the Philistines,
Hmm.
Right.
but it's not very nice.
Mm-hmm.
But God
Yes.
chooses people who are not very nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another theme.
So the refrain with Samson is the Spirit of the Lord rushed on him. What do
Yeah.
you make of this phrase that it's either Samson has anger issues or the Spirit of the Lord is like causing Samson to have anger issues?
Oh,
What do you think? Is the Spirit of the Lord just rushing on him, or is that Samson's explanation for something?
Oh.
Yeah, Larry.
I was going to say maybe it's an indication the Lord wasn't paying much attention to him. Then all of a sudden, he's about to be devoured by a lion, and he has to run in fast to do something.
Mm-hmm. That's one way to take it, yeah.
Well, and that might explain why God let Samson do all these rather odd things. You know.
Mm-hmm.
well, we already know that the Lord is depicted in this part of the Bible isn't like, it doesn't have the same ethics that we do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's always encouraging them to kill everybody, and I don't think that's something we approve of now.
Right. Yeah.
And if you don't do it, you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm. So at the end of this first episode, we see that Samson's wife is given to one of his companions.
Mhm.
That Samson's hot in anger. He killed 30 people in order to give his companions the linen garments and the festival garments. So he basically killed people and plundered their belongings. And he goes back to his father's house. I believe what is going on when it says Samson's wife was given to his companions, that is talking about the father-in-law basically being like, guess he didn't like my daughter since he's not taking her, so I'm going to marry her off to another person so she is protected. And so after a while, Samson goes to visit his wife, and father-in-law says, oops. I thought you didn't want her. I gave her to someone else. Do you want her little sister? She's also very pretty. And Samson gets angry about this one too. So, first of all, does Samson have a right to be angry here?
I don't think so. I mean, I appreciate what his father, the father did, the father of the woman. I mean, he provided for her. Otherwise, she would have been damaged goods, never to have anything in her life. And so,
Yeah. I feel a lot of sympathy for this woman who just she gets threatened in the Riddle saga because the people are going to burn down her and her family's house if she doesn't tell it, and then when Samson finds out, he goes into a murderous rampage. So this brings us though to episode 2 of Samson being Samson. His response is he wants revenge because his wife is basically not his anymore. And he takes a bunch of he catches 300 foxes, lights their tails on fire, and then lets them run through the fields, through the village, and just burn everything down with these flaming foxes. What
That
do
is
you
so
think
awful.
of
The poor foxes.
Mhm.
They were burned up too, I imagine.
Yep.
well, it was really an
Really not a good person.
image. The foxes, he was able to take these wild foxes and arrange them tail to tail.
Mhm.
So did he bind their tails and then light that? I mean, it's an image that is really odd, but it's effective.
Mm-hmm.
Burns to grain,
Mm-hmm.
burns to crop.
So how does this, because Samson is like a judge, he's supposed to be the leader of his people. How does this kind of action compare to like Gideon or Deborah or some of the other judges that we've seen?
He's a thug.
A thug, okay, say more. What makes him a thug and not a general?
Oh, well, he wasn't acting like a general, so I assumed he was just a thug. He makes up his own rules. He's very violent. He doesn't. I don't know what the rules were for generals, but it seems like warning people and telling them what they did wrong, and that it's not a very fair. He's not fair. I mean, he just has temper tantrums and kills people. I mean, it's yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, Larry?
Well, he's not leading anyone. He's just acting solely by himself. I mean, he's creating all this havoc. He doesn't have a lot of followers. He's not getting the people behind him to go ahead for a purpose. He's just interested in his own whatever,
Yeah, is he supposed to be the leader of his people? Because he doesn't act like it.
He is supposed
He
to
sounds
be.
like an adolescent who's just having temper tantrums.
Well, nothing was said about his being appointed a leader. I think he's
No.
a leader because he's in the book of Judges.
Right,
In
right,
a chapter. That's his only qualification.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and he did have the spirit of the Lord on him. I mean,
Well, okay, yeah.
It's a very odd, this whole thing about the fire and then then the Philistines kill her and her whole family.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. So Samson's wife and her family, they're out of the picture, they're burned up. But then the Philistines come up and give trouble. They raid a town, an Israelite town of Lee. And then the Israelites come to Samson and be like, "Hey, why are you doing this thing?" And he's basically saying like, "As they did to me, so I've done to them." It's like, I am fighting back against the Philistines since they have done bad things to me.
Mhm.
And so this is, in a way, this is episode 3,
Mm.
3, I guess, of Samson's violence. The Israelites want to bind him up and hand him over to the Philistines. And Samson wants to make sure that the Israelites are not going to kill him. And they promise not to kill him. They bind Samson up, but when he gets close to the Philistines, Samson basically hulks out, breaks the bindings, picks up a jawbone, and kills 1,000 men around him. So what do you think of, like, some of these episodes of this periodic violence? Is he being effective at pushing back the Philistines, or is this, like we've said, just a man lashing out?
I think he may be using the excuse that he needs to get rid of the Philistines, but he seems to be lashing out. But I think in war, it's kind of hard to tell what's going on, because I was thinking what happened in Vietnam, or I mean, in lots of wars, that some of the behavior is really lashing out, and the more awful things that people do in war are often revenge.
Mhm.
But the Israelites are trying to get rid of him.
Well, in the second half of 15, yeah, they see Samson as trouble, so they bind him up and hand him over.
Yeah, it was that he killed 1,000 men. Yeah.
Yeah, so clearly he's not a leader of the Israelites.
No.
But at the end of 15, it does say, and he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines for 20 years. And so we have like a 20-year time jump where evidently he
is the sort of the leader in that thing.
We don't fully know what this means, because like you all said, doesn't look like he has a lot of supporters or followers. He just seems like a strong man. So that line may be in there by the people editing it, just to make sure that, like, oh yeah, Samson did lead. He just wasn't this hothead.
Okay.
But that brings us to one of the most famous story of Samson is Samson and Delilah. And so Samson's at it again, and evidently even though he's not supposed to touch dead bodies, he's not supposed to drink alcohol, he's not supposed to cut his hair, prostitutes are completely fine. And so he's going to these ladies of the night and spending his coin as such. And the Philistines get the idea that when he is with one of these ladies, that's where they're going to go and subdue Samson. And so the first time, it doesn't really work. Samson doesn't stay as long as they hoped. He rose at midnight, and then at midnight he took hold of the doors of the city gate and the 2 posts, and he pulls them up, and basically puts them on his shoulder and carries them to the top of the hill. And so he's instead of being subdued by these people, he just like takes the city gates and like walks away with them. So, but after that small little episode, we get introduced to Delilah. So what do you all think of Delilah? Give a quick character sketch of who you see her being described as in this scripture.
Well, she was a prostitute, was she not?
Yep.
And it sounds as if, she is certainly amenable to helping her people against Samson. After all, he's just another customer. She may not have any grand, strong feelings about him.
Yeah, so she, she's a working woman. She has her needs to take care of. What are the kinds of things that motivate her then?
Probably day-to-day existence.
Right.
Although she might hope that by assisting the people who wanted to subdue Samson, she might have a little bit of future job security.
Mhm.
Yeah, nothing's really said about why they wanted to get rid of Samson. I mean, what's he doing to bother whomever the plotters against him, you know?
So what has he done? Why would Samson want to be done away with?
Well, maybe they want the city gates back. I don't know.
Well, if the Philistines are the arch enemy, the Philistines want to get rid of him.
Yeah.
At no matter what cost. I mean, well, I mean, okay, think about it from the Philistines' point of view. We're just tired of dealing with this riffraff and this brutish guy and everything that's going wrong around here. Let's just, they don't really want to bother with him. And so but he keeps coming back against the Philistines. But you could see from their point of view, he's an irritant.
Mhm.
Is Delilah a Philistine?
Mhm. Yeah. So she's a Philistine, so she's technically part of the enemy.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But that's never bothered him before.
no,
No.
not really.
He's more
So-
interested in that she's a woman. To heck with her politics.
Yep. So yeah, from the Philistines' point of view, there's this hothead guy who has superhuman strength who keeps finding excuses to kill people.
Mhm.
Like he marries a woman and then kills 30 people,
Mhm.
goes back and then kills a bunch of more people because he was angry with that situation. In another situation, people bound him and he was angry for being bound, so killed 1,000 people. Like this guy's a wild card.
Mhm.
He's a warrior without a cause in a way, that he's a loose cannon. Like he's not being strategic with military. He's just showing up
No.
and murdering people.
Mhm.
But also no one can constrain him. So like this guy's a liability.
Yeah, and I guess if you believe the story that he single-handedly killed 1,000 warriors with the jawbone of an ass, that's not even a lethal weapon. He is, not the usual dude. This guy has got something different.
Mhm.
Well, I'm reading ahead.
He reminds me of the Incredible Hulk.
Mhm.
I used to watch with the kids. We used to watch that on Friday night. It was the thing. You don't want to make me mad. And then he became a Samson. Stronger and more powerful and bigger.
And green.
Yes, and green.
Mhm.
Gretchen, I agree. There was always something that made him mad.
Right.
There was a justification, although his reaction was disproportionate. And he always had a reason to be angry and disappointed.
And he was on the side of justice, wasn't he? Usually, wasn't the Hulk on the side of?
I don't know about the Hulk.
Mhm.
I don't know. It was a moral thing that as a family, we watched and believed that it would take place, that if you were judged, you were going to go against it, justice would be done. And that's a bunch of crap. But anyway, we just watched it because it was kind of fun on Friday night.
Mhm. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, he may have cause to be angry at times, but he also is engineering these situations to be angry. Like he's doing this stuff knowing this is gonna happen. So jury's out right now. And so the Philistine leadership goes to Delilah and they're verse 4 of chapter 16 says he has fallen in love with Delilah. What that means is up for anyone's interpretation. But Delilah evidently already has his confidence, already has his affection, whether that means she's really pretty and she's just his go-to girl, or whether that's more of like a romantic affection. I'll let you all decide what Samson's actually feeling towards Delilah. At any rate, Delilah is evidently not on the same page with this and willing to help the Philistines figure out what Samson's thing is. And so she is asking Samson, like, tell me your secret. Why are you so strong? And Samson will tell her something, and she will bind him up and then do a little like, oh no, the Philistines are coming. And then he'll just like Hulk out and like break it. And then she gets really sad because it's like, oh, you don't really love me. You aren't telling me the truth. It's clear. Look at this. I just tested you. And so what do you think of this tactic of both Delilah trying to get his secret out of him through her cunning wiles, and Samson kind of not trusting her and telling her a bunch of other things?
Well, you'd think that Samson would have tumbled to what she was doing. How many times can she dupe him before he knows that she's trying to do him in?
Mm-hmm.
But he gives in.
But he gives in. Yeah, he allows himself to, you know, the real, she says the real thing, and yeah, oh yeah, that's it. And it is an interesting thing with Delilah, isn't it? Her cunning, his ability to see that it's cunning and to
Yeah.
kind of take charge by giving these fake answers. But in the end, he doesn't.
So why does he give in? Because it says it in verse 16 why he gives in.
Get him. Nagged him. It's like the story of the judge in the New Testament. New Testament. I just got tired of it, pestering me day by day.
Yep. So Samson is strong against everything but a nagging woman. So it wasn't even that she seduced him. It's not that like she got it out in a moment of passion. No, she was annoying. She annoyed the answer out of him.
Yeah, and I'm almost surprised at the words that the translators chose to use. You know, she nagged him and she pestered him. You know, that's, you know, sort of a strong indication that she persuaded him through her wiles, you know.
Uh-huh.
He was tired to death.
Yeah, he couldn't take it anymore.
They also knew she was gonna go after him and kill him. Told her.
Uh-huh.
He could be pretty dumb for such a smart person, huh?
As we've said before, Samson maybe not be thinking with the right body
Yeah,
parts.
right.
And so when I mean, Delilah's pretty smart, so she realizes this time she doesn't test it out. When she hears this one that like you cut off all of his hair, he's gonna be weak as anyone. She knows that she has the right answer. So she lets him fall asleep on her lap. Big strong man laying on the woman's lap, and while he's sleeping, she shaves his head. Yep, 7 locks of his head. This might mean his hair is actually matted and like in big dreadlocks, so like that's the indication. And this is when the Philistines are able to seize him. They gouge out his eyes and they bring him down to Gaza, and they bound him with bronze shackles in the middle of the prison. So at the end of it all, with a shaved head, he can't even fight off like a couple of guys holding him back. And so what do we think of Samson at this point? He's bound in prison. He has no eyes. He's not doing well.
No.
This is kind of pathetic.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
He's really been brought low. And then he doesn't care. He doesn't care what happens to him after that.
I
Yeah.
suppose many would feel he's finally gotten his comeuppance,
Mm-hmm.
particularly if you're a Philistine.
Mhm. And at the hand of a woman.
Yeah.
And without any intercession by the Lord.
By the who?
By the Lord, by his
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
You know,
God doesn't rush
Where
upon
was
him.
God when he really needed him?
Well, he didn't call on God. He
Well,
said,
he didn't
Lord,
before. Did he? I
Mhm.
mean, when the lion jumped at him, God was right there to save him. But
The
when they
spirit
were
rush.
gouging his eyes out, he wasn't around.
Right.
A pretty unpleasant Sunday school story, isn't it?
Mm.
Yes.
I
Right.
mean,
So then after at the very end of this section, so he's bound with bronze shackles. Oh, I got my medals wrong. The Israelites are in the Iron Age. The Philistines are in the Bronze Age.
Bronze Age.
okay,
Got my
okay.
medals mixed up, sorry. So iron versus bronze. Bronze is a lot stronger, and so we know that the Philistines are more advanced because they are binding Samson in bronze shackles. So they're using the good metal even for just this prisoner here.
Mhm.
So then the lords of the Philistines, they gather together. They want to sacrifice to their god Dragon, because they see that their god has given Samson into their hands. This menace is finally taken care of. And basically what they do is they bring Samson out as like a party trick. Let him entertain us, it says. And so they call him out from prison, they perform from them, and they make him stand between 2 pillars. And Samson's one request is like, I'm blind, let me at least feel the 2 pillars so he may lean against them. Lo and behold, though, the prison guard had not kept Samson's head shaved. And so his hair has begun to grow again. And so because his hair is starting to grow back, Samson calls to God and says, Lord God, remember me and strengthen me only this once, O God, so that with this one act of revenge, I may pay back the Philistines for my 2 eyes. He grasps the 2 pillars, which the house rested. He leans his weight against them, one on his right hand and one on his left. His request is, let me die with the Philistines, and he basically collapses the house with all the officials, with all the lords and ladies and everything. And Samson dies because the house falls, but everyone else is also killed. So what do we think of this final act of revenge?
Well, he brought down the Philistines.
He didn't bring down the Philistines as an entire people, but he did bring down their leadership.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, and it talked about the numbers. The numbers, I forget, what were there, 3,000 people up there on the ceiling or something? Or on
Yeah.
the,
Or in
So-
the house. I think probably decided that not having his sight wouldn't make life worth living too. I mean, I think that it isn't really as noble maybe as it sounds, but it does, well, revenge isn't noble anyway, but there's a lot of revenge in war.
Mhm.
The thing that's interesting to me, and I only noticed it today, was that this is a kind of a repetitive thing, because back at the beginning of 16, he also had this his thing with the city. You told about he had the gates and he had them up above, there's kind of similar, I think, the gates, the pillars, the
pillars of society.
strong man image
Mhm.
that they
Yeah.
repeated.
Mhm.
I mean, this is the good news of the Sunday school story.
Mhm.
On God's behalf, Samson defeated the Philistines and favored the Israelites once again.
Mhm.
So what do we think though? Like, did Samson ever care about the Israelites? In all that he's doing, does he actually care about the Israelites?
We don't know what he did during the time that he was the judge. And he
True.
actually worked as a leader when he wasn't killing people.
But compare him to, say, Moses. Moses went toe to toe with Pharaoh, and Moses's refrain was, "Let my people go."
Yeah.
Samson here in his final act where he's going toe to toe with the powers that be, he says, God, so with this one act of revenge, may I pay back the Philistines for my eyes.
I thought,
Mhm.
yeah, he's not saying anything about the people.
Yeah.
He's still the narcissist that he started out being.
We could say since he was an only child and he was doted on and
Yeah.
urged his characterological problems.
Samson has only child syndrome.
Well, my daughter's an only child and she's not like that, but no, I think in this, they only had one child to pay attention to in this particular case. You would have thought they'd done a little better job and been a little less indulgent, but of course they didn't know about things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It seems like Samson was just acting as an instrument of God through all of this and wasn't really that attached to anybody. He was just set down on the earth like a tornado, and he played through the whole script just
Mhm.
as God had wanted it to happen.
Mhm.
Very interesting.
And if indeed you can believe the timeline, you know, what are you going to do with the 20 years when he apparently was their leader? You
Mhm.
know, I mean, nothing said about that. So we really
We don't know.
any indication of anything that he ever did for anybody other than himself.
Right.
We don't. What is judging? Judging is
It's basically ruling. They're
ruling.
using
Okay.
it like Samson ruled over
Yeah.
the land for this amount of time, but even that's often contested, that these judges were more like chiefs of their tribes and not like kings over the whole area.
Okay.
So do we like Samson? Is Samson just like a guy of mythology and kind of like Zeus, where like, yeah, he's the main character, but he's not doing good things? Or do we like having like an action, like Samson's the closest thing we get to an action hero? What is your final take on Samson?
Well, sometimes action heroes do good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they like Superman's always saving people. He's not.
Right.
Once in a while, that involves killing somebody bad, but certainly not killing 30,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So he's, yeah. I don't like him at all. I think I don't understand why these people are in the Old Testament to begin with. I mean, he's not the worst one we've seen, but, you know, they're a bunch of bums as far as I can tell. Well,
Mm-hmm.
not Moses, and not, you know, there are plenty of nice, you know, good people, but
Not plenty.
they haven't read.
In my opinion. Okay.
A few.
A few good men, so to
Ugh.
speak.
Suk is one of my. I used to, when Giuliani was being toasted as the king of Manhattan or whatever it was, I always said he's nothing but a thug. Trying to be nice. So it's, you know, I'm a bit suspicious of.
Mm-hmm.
He's a, yeah. Is he supposed to be an example of a good guy?
I go with the logic, read everything on the page, including the white spaces. I think many of the Old Testament characters are just meant to be nuanced. I don't like, he's clearly not we do have some characters in scriptures that are very clearly supposed to be a representation of what not to do, and he's not that. He's definitely celebrated in a way, but it's one of those that he's not like King David, a man after God's own heart. And even King David is a very flawed person.
He is.
Where I think the story is in here, and it's not, there's legend and it's cool, and if you want like that like action guy in the Bible, like here's a story. But I don't think replicating Samson is a good idea. I think Samson has a lot of issues going on, but we've seen some of these in the judges already, that the judge does one thing right and another thing where it's like that feels kind of off. And Samson falls into that category too, where yeah, he's fighting the Philistines, but he kind of seems like he needs to go to anger management classes. And
Yeah. The Philistines are not. They just have there's occupying. They don't seem to have a need to attack Israel at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
That's an
they
interesting
are
point.
likely levying some taxes or doing some things. Like there is interactions, which is why
Yeah.
they're going toe to toe.
Yeah,
Gary, I
taxes
see you
or-
trying to jump in though. Gary?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm the one that's kind of out of sync here, but
Yeah.
at the beginning of chapter 13, the Lord had delivered the Israelites into the hands of the Philistines, and then he gets this idea that maybe this is going too far and it's time to do something. So instead of gathering up a leader and gathering thousands and having those big battles and wiping out cities and so forth, he he works on a new concept of a single individual that he controls to cause trouble and cause a lot of friction and get the attention of the Philistines. And he goes through the life, and then finally he makes a mate with the columns, a major statement of wiping out a significant amount of the Philistines. One person. And I think that's what's, to me, was pretty unique. We didn't have the thousands and thousands of people laying across the fields and piled up in the cities.
Mhm.
Right, none of the Israelites were killed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, so thanks
That's a
for
good
bringing that
thing.
up, Gary. I mean, that's the counterpoint. Like, he
Yeah.
was spoken of by a messenger of God. God kind of called Samson to do this, and evidently was influential to Samson's characters of being a wild ass of a man.
And we can see how people interpret this in a way that says, be an individual and do something powerful for God as an individual. This is, it seems to me, you know, sort of the self-made man again, you know, he takes on, and just, even with just a little bit of hair, he can become amazingly strong. It isn't a story that is an example. It's not like to say to the Sunday school class, okay, now go out and be like Samson. So it is a kind of an odd thing in a way to teach, to use in Sunday school. But I can see where it would bring in the little boys. I mean, can you imagine the action figures that you could do with this? Create a Lego set, Samson and Delilah, pillars and lions. I don't know, it's a very interesting. He's a complex individual. Or not.
It's interesting too, at the end, it leads you to believe he felt he had a good connection with God all along, because he just spoke to God and said, this one last time, give me the strength. When you flash back, you think he may have was aware that God was controlling his actions.
Yeah. So, two last thoughts, and I realize we're over time already, and so I'm going to try to wrap this up. But two interesting thoughts to just kind of consider. One is, in some ways, Samson is more effective at fighting the Philistines because of his downfall. Like he was.
Oh yeah.
His hair was cut. He was like, Delilah kind of bested him, and then his eyes are gouged out. Like, he's humiliated. All of that is meant to humiliate Samson. But out of that, he finds the strength once again. And I think that is the part of the story that I actually find most compelling. When Samson's trying to be witty, when he's trying to like tell riddles, get back at people, kind of engineering these situations, like they're effective and he's causing trouble, but it's actually at the moment that he is humbled that he kind of goes back to the roots. Like, throughout the stories, we kind of see God's role in his story lessen and lessen until he's back at square one, where he's like, okay, I don't have much going for me anymore. The only thing I have is my relationship with God, and this is the one thing I have left to use. I'm going to play my final card. And that perspective, I think, is an interesting one to dive into that we could, if we had more time. We don't. But the last thought is, Delilah gets a bad rap in history because she is the woman who basically bests Samson, and she does so through deceit, through what she's able to do in the bedroom with him. And I find it interesting in giving this bad rap to someone who, if she's a prostitute, that means she doesn't have protections in society. Likely means other things failed her. And also, Samson's part of the group of people, like Samson's causing issues for her people. And so I always just want to point out that, like, Delilah's doing the best she can, as women have often done throughout history. And if we had more time, I would dive into what's going on with Delilah, and does she deserve the bad rap that she gets? Because in some ways she does the exact same thing as we saw Rahab do in Joshua. She's just on the other team now.
Okay. I have a handyman here, so I have to go talk to him.
Okay, right.
All right.
But with that, I'm actually gonna plant those seeds, let you think about it, but if you all are ready, I can pray us out for today.
Oh, okay.
All right. Gracious and loving God, we trust that our faith in you makes us strong. All of us here have cut our hair, and most of us have at least eaten grapes once in our life, and so we're not following the rules of the Nazarene, but God, we trust that you still strengthen us. That when we don't know where to turn, your Spirit may rush upon us and give us guidance or comfort. Sometimes, God, we have been humbled in life, and that is, God, when we hope that we feel you the closest, where your guidance may be felt first and foremost. And so help us wrestle with life. Help us come to understand complicated and complex people who make decisions that sometimes we don't understand. But always let us come back to you in our times of struggle. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What do we read next?
Next week, 17 and 18.
17.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you much.
Okay.
Thank you.
See ya.